Last year, I took on the massive challenge of making 12 short films in an entire year. That included developing, writing, filming, and editing each one of them within the course of about a month. And by some miracle, I actually did it. Was it easy? Not at all. But was it worth it? Absolutely. Now, some of you may ask, why? Why would you do that to yourself? And the answer is actually rather simple. I did it to learn. I wholeheartedly believe that the best way to improve as a filmmaker is not to sit watching tutorials, reviews, and travel films all day on YouTube, but to actually go out and practice the craft, even if it sucks. And to be honest, some of the films I made over the course of the year were not up to the standards I wanted them to be. But I learned a ton from making them, and what I learned can improve my films in the future. So, in this video, I'll be going through film by film and telling you what it was like to make each one, the problems that came up, and also the lessons learned along the way. So, let's start by taking a look at the first film I made in 2022, Cascades. The idea for Cascades started back in December of 2021 when I made a trip up to New York to visit my grandparents. My grandfather knew of a ton of awesome waterfalls around the area, so I wrote the story to be driven by a letter that the main character, whom I played, was receiving from his grandfather. I ended up playing that character, obviously, as I just mentioned. It was just easier that way because I knew I would be able to get establishing shots back home if I missed anything, and overall it was just one of the more simple films I've made, but I still enjoyed it, and I learned that not everything has to be super complicated, because the end result is one of my favorite films that I've made. Now, onto the second film that I made in 2022, Interlude. So, this film was actually not initially planned, and it was done within the course of a week or two, as I was working on another film that I was hoping to release in February, but it was nowhere near completion. And so I ended up postponing that film's release to be the film for March, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But to keep up with my goal of releasing one short film every month, I had to make a film. Time was running out, and so I decided to make a silent film. I wasn't quite sure how it would turn out, but I drove to a local park about half an hour from my house for the sunset and filmed myself hiking to a viewpoint on the river. I felt a little bad that I wasn't able to make a more full-fledged film for February, but I actually really enjoyed the results I got from the hike, as God blessed me with a beautiful sunset that gave the footage a lovely, warm, almost reddish tone to it. From that, I was able to create a beautiful color grade for the film, and it's one that I'm still very proud of to this day. I still go back and watch this film whenever I'm in a bit of a creative drought, as it encourages me to get up and keep working on my craft, because as long as you put in the effort, you can make a good film just about anywhere. After that comes my third film of 2022, Trepidation. And of all the films I had pre-planned to make in 2022, this was by far the one I was most excited for. It was an idea I had in the back of my mind ever since my friend Tristan showed me the military surplus clothing that he collected. I'm not a fan of horror movies, but I did want to experiment with new and different styles of filmmaking that I hadn't tried before, so I wrote Trepidation to be more of a thriller type of film, but in order to make the film I needed to have the right locations. I wanted to film in a spruce or pine forest at night in order to achieve that extra spooky vibe, and luckily for me, I knew of a conifer forest not too far from my house. So I asked my friend Josh if he'd be down to act in the film, and he was on board. From there, we got to work. My friend Tristan supplied the military surplus gear that ended up being Josh's costume, and he was also willing to let us use his Jeep in the film, and he was also the driver for nearly all the shots in the film, save for the one where I was inside for dialogue and interior shots, since we couldn't find another actor to fill the role. However, as I mentioned earlier, my plan was actually to release this film in February, but that didn't happen. I took on a project that was much more complex and harder to complete in the window of time that I gave myself. Things were going much slower than I had wanted, and I was worried that I would have to push the film back another month to April. But Josh got me in touch with his friend Sam, who is a fellow filmmaker whom I've surprisingly never crossed paths with before. Sam was a huge help on set, and thanks to his efforts, we were able to get the rest of the film done at a much faster pace. I'm extremely grateful for Sam's help, and now we've worked together on several other films. and we're planning to work together for more projects this year. So stay tuned for those. He has a channel as well, so I'll link that in the description of this video. Ultimately, making Trepidation into a reality proved to be a much more difficult task than I anticipated, but it was worth every step of the way. The only problem I have with the result is that I made a choice to stay handheld for all the shots of the film, even ones shot at 85mm, which didn't hold up very well. Aside from that, I'm pretty proud of it, and it was a fantastic learning experience. Moral of the story, don't bite off more than you can chew when you're making a film, and just go with the flow. Now, for the fourth film I made in 2022, Backroads. Now, Backroads was originally going to be a completely different film than what it is now. The film was supposed to follow my friends and I as we took the backroads in my Jeep to avoid traffic, but I wasn't really able to find a good way to film my Jeep, and I had some scheduling issues with friends, so I was sort of stuck without a way to put the plan into action. That was until my friend Isaac reached out to me and said he had just picked up his dream car, a classic 1964 Dodge Dart. I asked him if he wanted to make a short film with it, and he said he did. So we met up to take pictures of the car, which helped me get a general idea of what it could and couldn't do, and what environments it would look good in. From that, I wrote a film to tell the story of him driving his car through the mountainous backroads to meet up with a friend from Sunset, racing against the sun. We were all ready to go until his car ran into some maintenance issues, as vintage cars often do. But thankfully, before the month was over, he was able to fix the car, and we had just 1 day to go out and film. We knew we were crammed for time, so we planned out what shots we wanted to get ahead of time and got all the equipment necessary to execute the vision. Earlier in the month, I had picked up suction cup clamps as well as straps and other rigging equipment in preparation for making the film, as I knew I wanted to get some chasing shots of the Dart. I was rather terrified to put my camera on the gimbal and then mount that gimbal to the back of my car, but after some preliminary testing, I found that the mounts actually worked really well and there was no play in them at all whatsoever. So when it was time to actually go out and film, we managed to get a majority of the footage in just 1 day, and I'm really happy with how all of the chasing shots came out. I also got some really awesome drone shots and other shots on the ground to complement the chasing shots, and Isaac also got some shots too, as he does videography work and brought his camera and gimbal. I'll link his profile in the description of this video too, so that you can check out his work. After we filmed it, I had about a week to edit it. So it was a pretty crammed deadline, and while it is one of the shorter films I've made this year, it is still actually one of my favorites. I love not only the look of the Dodge Dart, but the dynamic nature of the footage Isaac and I were able to capture of the car, with the help of his father, who actually was the driver for the film. So the main takeaway from this film is to be open to new ideas, because while my original plans for the film may have fallen through, I feel that the end result is even better than the original plans. After Backroads came Awakening, my 5th film of the year. Believe it or not, I actually had plans for this film to be the first film I would release in 2022, but the issue with those plans was that I was unable to get the weather conditions I wanted. Originally, the film was supposed to be about dawn and sunrise, and it was also supposed to incorporate cloud inversions, but I was not able to capture any of those in the winter. So I ended up realizing that the name Awakening fits significantly better with springtime, as the world is awakening from its cold winter slumber. So my new goal was to capture the majesty of God's creation coming back to life after a cold, dark winter. I still wanted to utilize fog and cloud inversions as a storytelling element in the film, but my previous attempts at catching such conditions were almost always unsuccessful, as I didn't know what to look for in the weather forecast and would just wake up for sunrise and hope for a cloud inversion. But after doing a little bit of research, I was able to find out a method that to this day has proven to be very effective at predicting cloud inversions. It would be a little much for me to try and cram all that information into this video, so stay tuned for that whole other video dedicated to that topic. Since this film pertained a lot to the aspect of blue hour, fog, and sunrise, I woke up extra early a few times when I saw the conditions were proper for filming, and by early, I mean waking up at 3 in the morning to drive out 2.5 hours to Shenandoah National Park for sunrise. And I'm not an early riser at all. But you do what you gotta do when you're a filmmaker. I went out on 2 separate occasions and got 2 completely different results. The first time I went out, it was on a day that was forecasted to be rainy, before the leaves had returned. But I went out with hopes of capturing everything shot in fog, and it actually worked. It was dark, moody, and perfect for the first half of the film. And the second time I went out, the forecast aligned with conditions that pointed towards a cloud inversion. And to my delight, I arrived early in the morning and the leaves had returned and there was fog in the valley. God blessed me with a beautiful sunrise and it worked perfectly for the film. The two trips created two different sequences for the film which contrasted against each other very well. The first was dark and moody and the second was vibrant and alive. Looking back, I am very thankful for the experience I had making this film, and yes, there is no dialogue again, but I wanted the landscape to tell a story and I feel that it actually works really well. The final film is something I'm very proud of and continue to rewatch to remind myself of the beauty of God's creation in nature. Now, onto the sixth film that I made in 2022, Infinitude. Infinitude was another film I had planned to make far out in advance when I was first developing my ideas for this challenge. The idea was to tell the story of a group of friends going on a journey out to the mountains to experience the beauty of God's creation and forget about their problems. The idea was to have the characters camp out at a fire tower and see the entirety of the Milky Way once the sun had gone down. And I had a particular fire tower in mind for this film, but given my past experiences with camping trips, I knew it was best to have a backup location ready just in case the weather conditions weren't looking too favorable. So my friends Josh, who acted in Trepidation, and Aiden said that they'd be down to go camping and act in the film. And so we marked down the times that we were available, and it worked out that the trip would actually take place over my birthday, which I felt was a great way to spend the day. But when the week of the trip came around, the weather at the main location I wanted to film at was not looking good at all, as rain was forecasted for pretty much the entire time that we would be there. So I made the decision to reroute the trip to our backup location, which was in West Virginia. While I was a little disappointed in the moment, it would not last long, as despite the conditions looking to be only slightly better at the backup location, things ended up turning out so much better than I had ever hoped for. As soon as my friends and I crossed the border from Virginia into West Virginia, the skies immediately cleared up. Once we made it to the location, we met a significant challenge. Normally, to access the camping location at this fire tower, you simply drive up an access road. And I had made a sunset trip up to this tower a few months prior with my friends to scout it out, and was able to drive up the road with no problems. However, we learned that in the summertime, the park locks the gate for the tower's access road, which requires us to park at the bottom and then hike with all of our gear up to the tower. Since we were planning on just driving up to the top, we brought a lot of things, thinking it wouldn't be a problem. But it was a problem. We had to make several trips up and down the access road, which was pretty steep at sections and over a mile long, but thankfully we were able to get everything we needed up to the top of the mountain and got settled in well before the sun had begun to set. So we were able to relax for a while and plan out shots. From there, the fun began. The view from the top of the fire tower was simply serene, and we had the place to ourselves. That's the great thing about remote, rural spots deep within the Appalachian Mountains. If you look in the right places, you'll find locations that the general public doesn't know about. And I'm glad that I had scouted out this location months before, because it truly is a hidden gem. I actually have a whole video all about location scouting and how you can find better locations for outdoor filmmaking and photography that I'll link in the cards above in case you're interested. As the sun went down, we got some awesome footage of the golden light and surrounding scenery. That was great, but the best part was actually after the sun went down and when the stars came out. When I say that I had never seen this many stars before in my life, I absolutely mean it. It was breathtaking. Not only was it incredibly beautiful, but it was quiet, almost silent, with just the slight whisper of the trees swaying in the calm summer breeze. The location was so deep into rural West Virginia that there was pretty much no light pollution, and the view from the top of the fire tower at night was simply unparalleled. Once our eyes adjusted to the dark, we were able to see the Milky Way in its entirety. It was an absolutely beautiful yet very humbling experience. I stayed up pretty much all night capturing time lapses of the Milky Way from around the tower, and the results are just absolutely mind-blowing. The entire trip was such a blessing, and it wasn't even the end of the crazy views. I wasn't even planning for it, but in the morning after, there was a cloud inversion, which just was gorgeous. Even though my friends and I had to hike a few extra miles, I'm very much grateful for the trip and experience, and I left with memories that I'll never forget. I pulled the story of the film together by creating a bit of a voiceover from the story element of leaving a voicemail for my friends telling them about the trip that we could take. So therefore, the whole idea of the film is a hypothetical. And overall, I think this is actually a very strong contender to be the favorite film I've made in 2022, if not my favorite film I've made overall, because everything just turned out so perfectly and it was just a blessing from God. If there's a key takeaway from this film, it's to have a backup option and also to be willing to just go with the flow. Next up is Laminar, my 7th film of 2022. I'm going to be honest, when originally planning out the short film challenge, I only planned the first 6 films up to Infinitude. I had no idea what I wanted to do for the other 6, so this kind of left me in a bit of a tough spot for making Laminar, my film for July. My family and some friends went down to the beach in North Carolina for a week, so I figured it would be a good time to make a short film. But I struggled to find a concept for it. I also had a lack of motivation given that I'm a mountain man and not a fan of the beach, especially sand. It's coarse, rough, irritating, and it gets everywhere. So my lack of motivation led to me making what I would say is a bit of a lackluster film. I woke up for sunrise and headed to the beach with my friend Danny to film shots. Danny did a great job posing and with the voiceover, but I just struggled with how to tell a story with it. So that's on me. If I could reshoot any of the films I made this year, this would probably be the one I'd choose. The moral of the story here is don't let your location demotivate you from making a film, because sometimes you just need to push through your creative block in order to get the results that you want. And I wasn't really willing to do that here, which unfortunately, right. Now let's talk about Memories, my 8th film of the year. August was a really busy month for me, and I knew that I was going to have a really tough time getting a full short film made, as I was traveling to Greece for the first 2 weeks, and then a few days after I came back, I had to go off to college. I wanted to film a short film in Greece, but that didn't really work out because our itinerary wasn't quite set in stone. So I had a spontaneous idea pop in my mind to make a film that focuses on memories and transitioning to a new chapter in life, as I was going off to college. So I put together a large collection of my best footage from the summer onto my SSD and began trying to tell a story with it. I also filmed some shots of me packing and leaving for college and incorporated those shots into the film as a storytelling element. Another element that I used to drive the story was the printed photos, which I incorporated to help transition between different memories and moments from the summer. I actually still have those photos up on my wall in my dorm. They're great reminders of what an awesome summer I was blessed with, and they're also great conversation starters whenever I have visitors. Overall, what I learned from making this film is that it's okay to push the boundaries of filmmaking a little bit and to try new things, and also storytelling methods that people may not find to be conventional. While it's not really a traditional short film, I still am pretty proud of it, and I go back to watch it whenever I want to revisit those memories from this past summer. Then comes my 9th film of the year, Solitude. This film is a fairly simple one. September was also a very busy month for me since I was getting adjusted to college and didn't have a car with me on campus to go out and film things, so I had to keep whatever filming I did within walking distance of my school. Liberty University, where I'm attending college, actually has a bunch of trails on the mountain next to campus that were within walking distance of my dorm. So I knew I wanted to make a film about hiking alone in the rain, and the first day that it rained, I went out and hiked around on the mountain. I think I hiked around maybe 9 or 10 miles total that day, just getting shots of the film and enjoying the serenity of God's creation, which is actually especially beautiful to me in the rain. And overall, this was a pretty fun film to make, and since it was a silent film, it was pretty simple as well, which was exactly what I needed because I was pressed for time. So if you're unable to go long distances for filming, it's still a good idea to check for local locations you can film at and tell a good story. From there, we have my 10th film, Vibrance. The idea for this film all started as soon as I started making plans for fall break. I did a lot of research on where fall colors would be peaking and came to the conclusion that West Virginia was going to be the place for me to visit. So I came up with the idea of retelling the story of my trip to my roommates Jonathan and Tim back at college as the driving force behind this film, and using the dialogue from that to transition from moment to moment along the trip I took through West Virginia. Overall, I had an amazing time exploring West Virginia, and I got to visit a few new places as well as revisit places I had already been to see them in glorious colors. This film ended up being the longest film I actually made over the course of this challenge, nearing a length of almost 6 minutes. The biggest factor that made this film work very well and go pretty smoothly was the planning. So if you're ever going to go on a trip to make a film, be sure to plan well, but also be open to making some changes along the way. After Vibrance comes Refuge, my 11th film of the year. Starting late last year, I had been reading through the book of Psalms and the Bible as my daily devotional and time with God. And I found a lot of encouragement and wisdom in the Psalms that I read. One Psalm in particular stuck out to me, and I was actually reading through it during a rather stressful time, midterm exams. That psalm was Psalm 34, which talks about taking refuge in God. So I felt inspired to make a film revolving around Psalm 34, verse 8, which reads, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. How happy is the person who takes refuge in him." That refuge stuck out to me and reminded me that as a Christian, I can take refuge in God. So that was the theme for the film. I had the idea of using two sequences with drastically different lighting, moods, and locations to tell the story. Because I wasn't able to find actors, and I also felt like the film described the way I was feeling at the time, I felt that it would be alright for me to act in that one. So during Thanksgiving break, I went with my friend Sam to a fire tower near my house to film. But unfortunately, the tower got pretty crowded as it was a more popular one and also easy to get to. Take that and add Thanksgiving tourism and you're left with one crowded fire tower. So I was only able to get a few shots before other people showed up and I was unable to continue filming and get the footage I wanted. I should have accounted for it, but that was just an oversight at the moment. So when I returned to campus, I ended up having to reshoot the entire film, but it worked out pretty well, as I was able to take my car down to campus, which enabled me to visit a different fire tower with my roommate Jonathan and my friend Ari, and this tower was actually much more isolated and worked better. And yes, I really like fire towers. I couldn't help it. This one fire tower was actually the original spot I had planned to visit for Infinitude before I ended up going to the backup location. It's much closer to my college than it is to my house, so it worked out really well for filming this film. Once we got the shots during sunset at the fire tower, my roommate Jonathan and I went to the library at my college to get the shots for the first sequence. We had to shoot it again due to some continuity issues on my part from the first time I went to shoot that scene, but the second time around, this scene was much better. The library scene serves to introduce the viewer to the stress that I'm feeling, but then when I open my Bible, the film transitions to a place of refuge and peace, which is represented by God's Word and the fire tower. So, while the idea for this film was much more personal, I think that out of all of the films I've made over the course of 2022, this may have had the best story and message. So, there are a few things to take away from this. One being that it's okay to reshoot a film, and sometimes it's necessary, and other times it may not be, but it can open your eyes to see new possibilities. The other thing is that writing a film from your perspective and experiences can actually lead to a more interesting and impactful story. Now comes the final film of 2022, Blessings. And I'm gonna be honest, this one was really rushed. I was really busy with finals during December and then wasn't met with great weather when I came back home, so I wasn't really able to make a narrative-based film. So I was left with making another sort of recap type of film, which wasn't really bad, but it kind of feels like a cheat to me. I feel like I could have done so much more from this last film, and if I had the opportunity to go back and redo it, I would have rewritten out the story for it to be one that kind of went on as the year went along, and I would turn moments from my year into a fun story instead of just making a recap film. But at this point, it's too late for that, and the key takeout here is that burnout is very real. I was feeling quite demotivated at the end of the year, and I just wanted the short film challenge to be over. But I didn't really feel like I had a good way to end it, so I didn't really finish the challenge in the way that I had hoped. But I still completed it. By the end of 2022, I had made 12 short films. Were they all perfect? No. Am I glad that I did it? Absolutely. Should you do something like this? Well, that's up to you. I want this video to serve as an encouragement to you. If you're looking to get into filmmaking, there is no better way to learn than by going out there and actually making films. You don't have to go crazy and make 12 short films in a year like I did. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. And if I can encourage you to do anything, it's just to get out there. Try to film something. Maybe you'll fail, maybe you'll succeed. But regardless of either of those, you'll definitely learn. And you'll learn a lot. With all that being said, I won't be continuing the short film challenge this year, as it was an amazing learning experience, but it was also very time consuming, and also hard to make the films I wanted to make in just a month each. So for this year, I'm not going to have a set amount of films I'm going to make. I'm going to go with the flow and let things take as long as they need in order to make the best films possible. I can't make any big reveals this early in the year, but I do have a few projects lined up for this year that I hope you'll enjoy. In the meantime, I'm going to try to make a lot more DaVinci Resolve tutorials and behind the scenes videos this year, as I was lacking on those last year due to my time being taken up by the challenge. So if you're interested in seeing those videos, you know what buttons to click. I also am planning on launching an exclusive membership website that will provide additional content and benefits to those who are interested in filmmaking, but also supporting my channel in the meantime. The plan is to have extended tutorials, full resolution practice footage downloads, and also include power grades and LUTs for all members. That being said, it's not official yet, so if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. I'll hopefully be announcing more about that here very soon. And for all of you who have been watching my videos and supporting my channel, please know that you are such a blessing to me. I am so thankful that over 2,000 people have decided to subscribe to my channel to see my work. I hope that this video was able to provide some insight to you and also some encouragement. Remember, if you want to learn, you just gotta get out there. Anyhow, thank you for watching this video, especially to the end. I hope you learned something, and I hope that I'll see you around in the next video. If you enjoy, you know what buttons to click, and my name is Rocco Chimoni. Jesus loves you, and I'll see you in the next video.